Hi, John from Diode Dynamics. Today we'll be installing our SS5 CrossLink Grille kit and our SS5 bumper kit on this 2017 Jeep JK Wrangler. Let's get started. Both installations will start off the same way by removing the grille. Our first step will be to disconnect the factory turn signal. Now you also have the option where you can remove the entire bulb from the housing by twisting counterclockwise. Once you do so, you can repeat the same step on the passenger side of the vehicle. Once that's complete, we can head to the top of the grille to remove 6 plastic push clips. We'll be using a trim removal tool for this step. Now we can remove the grille. You'll want to place one hand behind the factory turn signal and a good grasp with the other, and then we'll pull forward to release those clips. Next, we'll be removing our bumper trim panel, which is held on by 2 plastic push clips that we'll remove with our plastic trim removal tool. Once that's removed, we can set it aside because we will not be reinstalling this piece. Moving underneath the vehicle, we'll be removing the skid plate. Now yours may be plastic, but ours is metal, so we'll be removing 7 15mm bolts. It's important to note, if you have the metal skid plate, that before you remove your last bolt, you may want to grab an extra hand so you can lower it down gently. With those pieces removed, we can now install our Rivnut. First, we can take our long M6 bolt and then take our 10mm nut. We'll begin to thread that on. Make sure you leave some space. We don't want to tighten that all the way. And then we can slide our washer on. We'll take that portion that's assembled and slide it to the top of our bracket and take our Rivnut to the back side and tighten that just hand tight. Coming to the driver's side of the vehicle, we can take our base bracket and locate the hole on top of our frame rail and drop our Rivnut in place. To make sure the base bracket is in the correct orientation, we'll want to make sure the flat portion is facing towards the inside of the vehicle. Coming to the bottom of the base bracket, we can take our M6 bolt and slide on our included square washer, and we're going to slip that behind our bracket. Once we slide that bolt through and we can see the threads, we can take our 10mm flange nut and tighten it down. Now we can take our 10mm wrench and slide that over the bolt onto our nut, and then use a 10mm socket to hold the bolt in place while we crank the wrench clockwise. This will secure the Rivnut underneath. With our Rivnut secured, we can now go back to our hardware and remove the bolt, washer, and nut, and then take off our bracket. Once that's done, we can repeat the same process on the passenger side of the vehicle to install our Rivnut. With our Rivnuts installed, we can reinstall the grille by reversing the same steps we used to take it off. With our grille back on, we can fully install our base brackets. We can start by threading our M6 bolt and washer through the bracket and into the Rivnut. And on bottom, we can use the same hardware as before. Once that's taken care of, we can go back through with a 10mm wrench and tighten everything down. With both base brackets secured, we can reinstall our skid plate using the factory hardware. Moving on to our bumper kit, we'll need to mount our SS5 to our universal bracket. We can start by adding our small set screws to the bottom holes of our pod using a 2.5mm Allen key. Then we can set our SS5 into the universal bracket and loosely thread in 2 5/32 Allen screws with washers on either side of the pod, leaving room for adjustment later. Next, we'll drop our carriage bolt through our universal bracket and line up the threads with the outermost hole on our base bracket. We can then loosely install our washer, lock washer, and nut underneath the bracket. Now that we've mounted our SS5s, we can route our wiring. Now there's several ways to do so, but it's important to note all you need is a power, a ground, and a place to mount your switch. Additionally, we've routed our harness behind the headlamp up underneath the grille and then into the back of our SS5s. With our DT connector plugged into the back of our SS5s, we can now make our final aiming adjustments. Once you have those aimed where you like, you can grab a 13mm wrench and tighten the nut underneath of our SS5 on the bracket, and then grab a 5/32 Allen key and tighten the 2 bolts on the left and right side. Now, if you went with our SS5 CrossLink grill kit for your Jeep, you want to start by assembling your light bar. To see an in-depth video on how to assemble this, check the video that's linked in the description below. Once you have that assembled, you can grab your universal CrossLink brackets and head to the front of the vehicle. Now we can install our universal CrossLink bracket. We're going to make sure the holes on the bottom of our bracket line up with the 2 innermost holes on our base bracket. And just to check the orientation, we want to make sure the flat face is towards the inside of the grille and the holes up top are facing the front of the vehicle. Then we can take our M6 screws with our washers and drop them in place. Once we have those dropped in place, we can take our flange nuts and tighten those down. Then we can secure our hardware using a 10mm wrench and a 5mm Allen. Now we can install our light bar using the included M6 hardware on the left and right side of our brackets, but make sure this is only hand tight for now. We'll also want to make sure our CrossLink splitter harnesses are plugged in before mounting our light bar. Now we'll be routing our wiring. We'll be using our single output harness, and it's important to note all you'll need is a power, a ground, and a place to mount your switch, and then we've routed our harness behind the headlamp, up underneath the grille, and then to the back of our pods. With everything wired up, we can now make our final aiming adjustments. Once we have it aimed where we like, we can take a 10mm wrench and tighten in those M6 bolts on the sides of our brackets. Finally, we can take a 5mm Allen key and tighten down the 2 screws on our end mounts. Not only are SS5s the highest intensity 5-inch LED pod on the market, but whether you went with our SS5 CrossLink grill kit or our SS5 bumper kit, you'll have an insane increase in light output for off-road use. Along with that output, you'll have a unique backlight feature that has 8 selectable color options. These kits were designed, tested, and assembled right here in St. Louis, Missouri with durability in mind, including our single-piece CNC aluminum CrossLink bracket. If you're looking for an SS5 kit for your vehicle or any of our other products, visit our website at diodedynamics.com or use our dealer locator tool to find a dealer near you. And if you want to stay up to date on any newer future products, be sure to like, subscribe, and turn on those notifications. Thanks for watching.